Hello and welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. If you saw my videos last weekend, you'll know we are back into Star Wars Armada. We're getting all these miniature ships painted and getting them looking like they do on screen. Today I'm going to be painting up Ghost from Star Wars Rebels. I absolutely love this ship. I love the fact that we saw it at the Battle of Scarif as well, or in space obviously, at the Battle of Scarif in Rogue One. I've been really excited to get some paint on this one. If you haven't already, I've already done the Millennium Falcon and the Shadowcaster, and there's loads of videos we've done in the past as well. Make sure you do hit that subscribe button, because over the next couple of months there's going to be loads of this content coming your way. Before we get started though, as usual, let's get that kettle on. If you've seen any of the videos recently, you'll know the first thing we need to do is give them a base coat. Now I've created this makeshift sort of hedgehog looking thing out of some cocktail sticks and some bit of blue tack, and all we're doing is popping each of these little mini ships on there, giving them all a really good base coat. In this instance I've used Games Workshop's Grey Seer. It's the one that they recommend to use with the contrast paints. It's absolutely fantastic, really nice light grey, almost white sort of colour. It's like an off-white, so it's really good to keep those details in, especially when we're looking at these sort of size ships. It's not too thick at all. Now the first thing we're going to do is start with the cockpit, and that is a contrast paint again. This time we're going to be using contrast black Templar. Now this is a really good paint to pick out all of these glass areas. You've got the turret just in the center of the vessel there. You've got the two sort of areas of cockpit on the front, and also the engines. It's a really important area to paint grey. As you can see from the reference image there, it's a lot darker, so we want it almost a dark black, grey sort of a colour, and it looks absolutely brilliant with this contrast paint. Now I know a lot of you will be like, why is he painting lines with the contrast paint? These are flat areas, but I can't recommend this contrast paint enough. It's really good. Definitely my go-to now when I've got to paint anything black. If I want it darker, I literally just do 2 coats, same way as I would have to with another Games Workshop base black anyway. It's really good and drops in really nicely. And the second paint I'm going to use is Basilicum Grey. You'll know if you see my other videos, it's a really nice sort of mid grey to work on these ships with, to get different sort of coloured panels. A lot of these vessels have different sort of coloured panels. You can see on the reference image, it's almost a bluey grey on the reference. I'm going with this sort of mid grey colour. I could have gone with that bluey sort of colour, but I didn't think it'd look quite right. So I'm just picking out all of those areas that you can see on the reference image, just on the actual miniature here. You can see it's very small, so really do take your time. Only put a small amount of paint on the brush. You don't need to overload this. I know Games Workshop recommend that one thick coat with the contrast paints, but it's really not needed when you're looking at this sort of size of miniature. All you're going to end up doing is spreading out all over the place, and that's not what we want. Now to pick out the green details just on the Ghost here, we are using a Games Workshop Wag Flesh. It's a base coat. It's not a contrast paint, but it works really well to pick out those little green areas around the Ghost, as we've seen on screen in Star Wars Rebels. We know it's got some of those green areas, and this almost is spot on to that green colour that we want for the vessel itself. Now moving on from the green areas, the next colour we're going to be using is yellow. Now we really need to use this sparingly because there's only some very small yellow details on there. So again, use a very fine tip brush, take the majority of the paint off and just dot a little bit on there. You don't want to coat your brush in yellow paint and it all run all over the place. That's the last thing we want. Now I'm using Games Workshop's Avalanche Sunset for this one, because it's sort of a mid yellow. It's really nice, it doesn't look too bad once we've got the oil on there. It doesn't, you know, lose that yellow sort of colour at all, like we would do with some of the dark yellows, and it's really, really good. You can see it is all looking very bright at the minute, but when we get to the end, you'll notice, and if you've seen the sneaky peek on the thumbnail, you'll know that once we put this null oil on there, it looks really, really good. Now the last sort of colour really I want to try and pick out is the red, and I'm using Evil Sun's Scarlet to pick that out, and there's only a few small areas of this red on there, and as you can see, I've hardly got any paint on the brush at all. I'm just like dotting it on there, just really, really being careful with where I go, really taking my time, because you don't want to overload it, you don't want too much on there. But these miniatures really do work well when trying to do this, because they've got so many panels, so many lines, so much detail on the miniature that you don't really have to make that much effort when actually trying to get this. Now the engines on this, on the Ghost, are a yellowy sort of colour, so we're grabbing that Avalanche Sunset again, and I'm starting with that just on the edge of the engines, just to give a base for the sort of yellow. We do want it to glow slightly though, so we're going to grab another yellow. In this instance, it's going to be Flash Gits yellow. Now the reason I'm doing this is when you get this much lighter yellow and you dot it in the center of the engine, just as I'm doing there, as you can see on screen, what it does, it looks like the center is brighter than the outside. Now I know that might sound obvious, but when you come into engines, it works really, really well and makes that glow look more realistic. And I know at this scale we're probably not too bothered about it looking like that, but you know what, it looks brilliant when you get it on the tabletop next to some of the bigger capital ships. The final stage now is null oil, and to do that, I'm literally just caking the whole miniature in null oil. Don't obviously go a bit too mad. If you do put a little bit too much on there, don't worry, wipe the brush onto a piece of tissue or something like that, and then spread that null oil that you've already put on there around, essentially. And what this does is drop into all those recesses around the miniature and makes it look absolutely fantastic. It really makes a difference when using this, and it darkens it down and looks absolutely brilliant at the end, as you can see here. I am really, really pleased with how the Ghost has turned out. I think it looks brilliant. You can see the null oil's done its jobs, dropped into all those recesses where we didn't put any paint, and given some real definition to the miniature. The engines look great, they're glowing really nicely, you know, it makes it look a little bit more realistic. Trust me, when this gets on the tabletop next to the bigger ships, it looks brilliant. The other vessel that we've painted here, the other version of the Ghost, we've just used a few different colours, or the same in a slightly different way and on a few different panels, making it look like a completely different ship, and that way you can use both vessels on the tabletop without getting confused at which one's the which. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Go and check out the channel now for more great content. There's loads of painting videos including Games Workshop, Star Wars, and loads of fantasy settings such as Frostgrave and one of my favourites, Boars and Badgers. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.